Some people may not know this about the Chevrolet Beretta. It wasn't a bad car. It was simply caught between eras. When Chevrolet introduced the Beretta in the late 1980s, it was designed as a compact front wheel drive coupe at a time when the industry was shifting away from traditional rear wheel drive performance. Muscle cars were disappearing, fuel efficiency mattered, and manufacturers were trying to figure out what performance meant in a new context. The Beretta wasn't trying to be a Camaro or a Corvette, it was built to be accessible, affordable, practical, but it also offered something unexpected: real performance options. V6 power, manual transmissions, and eventually genuine motorsports credibility. Here's where the misunderstanding began. Early versions were judged alongside economy cars, not performance coupes, and because the Beretta didn't look aggressive or dramatic, many people dismissed what it could actually do. But the Beretta GT and later the GTZ proved otherwise. Strong, straight line performance, respectable handling for the time. And in racing, the Beretta dominated IMSA and SCCA competition in its class, earning more wins than many cars people still praise today. What made the Beretta special wasn't refinement or prestige, it was purpose. It delivered performance to buyers who couldn't afford sports cars at a time when the industry was redefining itself. The Chevrolet Beretta didn't fail. It served its role exactly as intended. It just lived in an era where subtle performance didn't get credit. That's why the Beretta matters. It represents a forgotten chapter in American performance, one where speed was made accessible, not aspirational, and like many cars judged by image instead of intent, it deserves a second look. Some people may not know this about the first generation Ford Probe GT. It wasn't a mistake. It was simply misunderstood. When Ford introduced the Probe in the late 1980s, the automotive world was changing fast. Fuel efficiency mattered, aerodynamics mattered, and manufacturers were trying to move away from the muscle car formula that no longer fit the moment. The Probe was Ford's attempt to look forward instead of backward. The GT version added capability, but that was never the headline. The Probe wasn't designed to be loud or aggressive. It was designed to be modern, front wheel drive, a sleek aerodynamic shape, Japanese engineering influence through Mazda. It was a car built for balance, efficiency, and everyday usability. Here's where the problem started. The Probe was widely rumored to be a future replacement for the Mustang. That comparison followed it everywhere, even though the car itself never asked for it. People didn't judge the Probe for what it was, they judged it for what it wasn't. Owners, however, understood it differently. The first generation Probe GT was comfortable, reliable, and genuinely enjoyable to drive. It handled well, it felt planted, and it delivered exactly what it promised without drama or pretense. The Probe didn't fail. It sold well, earned loyal owners, and helped Ford bridge an important transitional era. But history remembered the controversy instead of the context. That's why the first generation Ford Probe GT matters. It represents a moment when the industry was experimenting, adapting, and learning. It wasn't trying to replace a legend, it was trying to move the conversation forward. And like many cars built for change instead of nostalgia, it was appreciated most by the people who actually lived with it. Some people may not know this about the 1991 Dodge Daytona. It wasn't a muscle car replacement, it was something entirely different. By the early 1990s, the traditional American muscle formula was gone. Emissions rules, fuel economy, and changing tastes had reshaped the industry. Dodge didn't try to pretend otherwise. Instead, the Daytona embraced the moment it was built for. The Daytona was front wheel drive, turbocharged, and compact. That alone confused people who expected rear wheel drive and big V8 power, but the goal wasn't nostalgia, it was relevance. The Daytona was designed to be quick, efficient, and usable in everyday driving. Here's where it became misunderstood. Because it didn't fit the old muscle car image, many dismissed it as a compromise. But in reality, the Daytona delivered performance where it mattered most: strong mid range power, lightweight handling, real speed on real roads. The 1991 models represented a refined version of the concept: better drivability, improved reliability, and a platform that had already proven itself in racing and motorsports throughout the decade. This wasn't an experiment anymore, it was a mature idea. What made the Daytona important wasn't how dramatic it looked, it was how well it adapted. Dodge used turbocharging and smart engineering to keep performance alive during a period when many brands struggled to do so at all. The Daytona didn't fail, it evolved with its time. And when the market moved on again, it was left behind, not because it lacked ability, but because the next shift was already underway. That's why the 1991 Dodge Daytona matters. It represents a chapter in American performance that doesn't get enough credit, one where ingenuity mattered more than tradition, and performance survived by changing shape instead of disappearing.